On this episode of This Is a Lot, we sit down with Amy Nelson, mom of four, politics to Wall Street attorney, and founder of the Riveter. After raising $30 million in venture capital, her world was turned upside down in 2020. Amy is a powerhouse here to show us that even in the hardest chapters, you can persevere and rise. Amy and I met years ago, and so much has happened since then. I cannot wait to hear and let Ellie hear and all of our listeners more about your story, just your journey, and also like what has transpired in your life and the things that you've done and your children, your motherhood, and all of that. So hopefully we can cram that all into a quick, 45 minutes here. But can you give us just your elevator pitch, like sort of where you started and from a career standpoint and things?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me, Ellie and Nicole. So I started my career in politics, actually. Right out of college, I worked for Jimmy Carter's nonprofit called the Carter Center. And I was really fortunate to get to work on elections and anti-corruption work around the world. So I got to travel to places like Ethiopia and Jamaica. And I think it was really interesting for me in a lot of ways and pivotal because the Carter Center relied on young staff members. And so we had a ton of responsibility. And I learned very early on that if you show up and you do the work, they'll give you more work and you'll get more responsibility and you'll get to do more exciting things. From there, I went to law school and I thought I would go into nonprofit work and international work, but I went to a very expensive law school, the New York University School of Law, and came out with a lot of debt and went straight to Wall Street. I joined an incredible firm that I loved. And it was a similar situation in that I was, you show up, you do the work, you get more work. And it was an interesting time to be a litigator in New York, ended up representing Standard and Poor's through the financial crisis. And so just kind of put myself right into the middle of a tornado as the world was changing and the economy was blowing up. And at the time, before I started representing Standard and Poor's, like I didn't know anything about structured finance or about credit ratings or mortgage-backed securities, but figured out pretty quickly that a lot of lawyering was figuring out how to become an expert in whatever area you're working in, and then how to tell the story of what is happening. But later in life, I kind of realized that the prize for the pie contest of Wall Street lawyering was just more pie, and that I didn't want all the pie in the world. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in New York. It wasn't home. I'd grown up in the Midwest, and I wanted to be back in a smaller city and be able to spend time between politics and the law. And so I moved to Minneapolis from New York when I was 31 and joined another firm, Dorsey and Whitney, and was finding a great path to splitting my time between political things I was interested in. I was on Barack Obama's National Finance Committee and then also lawyering. And in Minneapolis, I met a guy. And he got a job shortly after we met in Seattle working for Amazon. And we moved out to Seattle together and we got married. And I kept lawyering for a while, but after I became a mother, I had my first daughter in August of 2014. I started to think about the way I spent my time very differently. And while I loved lawyering, I didn't have a passion for the kind of lawyering that I was doing. I was doing, corporate litigation. And for me, it's like if I'm going to spend time away from my kids, I wanted to be doing something I felt passionate about. I came to that realization and had to spend some time figuring out how I could do that and make money because I needed to keep working and wanted to keep working too. At first, I went in-house to a cell phone company, T-Mobile, and that was not the answer. Then I was like at a desk in an office park. The hours were very fixed from like 9 to 5:30. And with the commute, I wasn't seeing my daughter. And I asked if I could have some flexibility thing. So, I could see my daughter. And the answer was no. And that might sound wild now that work has changed so much, but back in 2016, that was the answer. And so I had to figure out something else. And I thought I would go practice law on my own so I would have the flexibility I wanted. And I started taking classes on like how to make a business plan, all of these things, because I didn't have any business background. And I would go to these classes in Seattle and they were in co-working spaces like WeWork. And everyone in the space was a man. And the WeWork spaces were like kegs and ping pong. And I was like, where the hell are women? Because I kept reading these stats that like women are starting businesses at 5 times the rate of men, but I didn't see them anywhere. And so eventually I had this idea like, well, what if I created a space like I see here with all these men, but thinking about women first? And what if I do that instead of lawyering? And I thought I would do more of a lifestyle business plan, and create kind of one club in Seattle where women could gather and work and learn. And that was the idea for the Riveter. And shortly before I kind of went down the path, I was talking to a friend about my idea. And he knew that I'd raised money for politicians. And he was like, why don't you build 100 of these? Why would you only build one? And I was quite literally like, what do you mean? Like, that's not I couldn't build 100. I don't have an MBA. Like, I don't know how to do this. He's like, nobody does. Just do it. And I kind of like, I'm a person who likes to be challenged and think big. And so I went home and I was talking to my husband about it. And he said, if you're going to swing the bat, swing it as hard as you can. Go for it. And I knew I had his support. And my mother had recently retired and was able to help us with, at that point, we had 2 kids. And I had just found out I was pregnant with my 3rd daughter, which was unexpected. Like 2 weeks after I quit my job, I found out I was pregnant with my 3rd daughter in 3 years. And so I took the bat and I swung it. And it was a wild ride. Over the course of less than 3 years, I raised $30 million in venture capital, grew the team to almost 150 people. And we opened Riveter co-working and event spaces in 6 states. We opened 10 spaces. During that time, I had my 3rd and my 4th daughters. So I had 4 kids under 5 and took on writing a column for Forbes, started an iHeart podcast, like all this stuff. And it was an education in business, an education in grit, an education in the wild sexist world of startups. But, I'm grateful for all of it. And I thought, that was the beginning. But then March of 2020 came around and the pandemic hit, and the Riveter, we had to shut down our co-working spaces, and we had a newsletter and a social media presence. So we pivoted to build a digital platform, which has been kind of the iteration we've been working on ever since. I am the Riveter now. Like, over time, it has evolved to be me, and I work with a lot of freelancers. We no longer have the co-working spaces, but so I've seen it all with business at this point, I think.
That's incredible. It's funny, like I knew the story, but as you go through it, in a lot of ways, it was like, I feel like, I don't want to speak for you, Ellie, but like definitely similar thread of like how we got here. Just nobody can anticipate motherhood. And especially as like drivers and like women that really want to succeed. I didn't think that I would bat an eyelash at, daycare and just continuing on. And then the second that like, you're like, wait, what? I have to leave my baby? And like, what's all this pumping situation? And like all these things that like, you can't tell someone about until you're doing it.
Yeah, there's a big takeaway that I took from your story, which is amazing, by the way, is that, and it's very similar. I think Nicole and I have talked about this before. Like, you had this urge to like, I'd almost step back, because I don't know how else to describe it, so that you can spend more time with your kids. But I feel like that propelled you forward. And it's so hard as like a driven female. You're in your head, you're like, I'm just going to take a step back and like, not push as hard and spend time with my kids. And like, I went through a season of that, of like, okay, I'm in not a cushy job, but kind of a cushy job. I figured out how to do it. I get all this flexibility, and like, I just wasn't happy, and it wasn't like I wasn't happy spending all the time with my kids, but like, there's some kind of fire inside of you that wants more. And it's like this pull. So and that's just because of, I guess, the personal stage I'm in. But like, listening to your story, I was like, okay, I'm not alone in this like really big desire to like fix my life so that I can spend more time with my kids. But like, it's almost impossible to like thrive at the level that a driven person wants to be. Anyway, so I just took that. It when you were walking through your story, I was like, oh, she kind of like took a step back and then launched forward,
I think that's exactly right. And it's, but the thing I'll say is that it was being the CEO of a company and the founder of a company with 150 employees, even though it was incredibly hard and I traveled a ton, like, I still saw my kids more than I would have if I was at a desk at the cell phone company, because I was in control of time to some extent, right? It's like I could take my kids into my office. Which I did, like, especially when they're babies, like I nursed them all the time in the office, or I could, go in a little bit late or incorporate the kids in a work trip, and like all these things I couldn't do as an employee. And like, my big takeaway, which might be completely not inspirational, but like, corporate America is not built for mothers. We, entered corporate America in droves in the 70s and 80s, and corporate America did not bend, did not change, did not do a goddamn thing. And we've been fighting for these like very, very small concessions for decades, but like, they don't really change anything. And I at the end of the day, like, I question, how can we succeed in a system that was not built for us and will not bend for us?
That's incredible. And just simple as that. I think it's interesting you say like your time. I find what you said, like, you're in control of the time, but also when your time's being spent like like impact. I call it like impact. If I'm making an impact for 3 hours, I'm okay. If I'm doing something that feels like a little bit of a waste of my time, that I just am like, why am I here? Then my heart's broken because my kids are at the beach or whatever. And I'm not thinking like that when I'm actually making an impact. And when you're in control of your time, you make impact, like you make an impact with your time. We all just went through the craziness of our mornings. Like, if you don't think that we can drive 5 hours worth of work into basically an hour and a half and do it well. We can,
Yeah.
but just sitting for 5 hours because that's, what the hours are,
Yeah.
it's not doable.
We waste a lot of time in corporate America,
Oh
especially
my
when we're
gosh.
at the office. I mean, there's so much wasted time. And like, I don't waste working on my own. Like, I don't waste any time that I'm working. And
Yeah.
and it might seem small, but like, I don't have a commute. I don't have to do like busy work. I don't have like the labor of the office, right? And say that gives me back 2 hours a day. That's 2 hours with my kids. That's 10 hours a week. Like, that's a childhood, right? Like that,
Literally.
like that, it deeply matters.
It's so funny you calculate like that. Like I am such, and it's just like I do it to make myself feel better. But I'll be like, okay, well, I instead of doing this or I left this or like you just said, 2 hours a day, 10 hours, like that equates to all of this. Like I'll like go back into it. And I'm like, oh, I'm basically a stay-at-home mom. It's like I do it to make myself feel better. But like you have to. But I want to like circle back to what Nicole said because I think I've noticed that I've started going into an office. I was working remote, but like wasn't fulfilled in my remote job and like was exhausted when my kids came home like because I was busy all day but again busy not feeling like I was making an impact and my kids would come home and I was exhausted and even though I got more hours with them like last night I was laying in bed and I was like oh my god I'm such a better mom the past 2 weeks you know what I mean like even though I might get an hour less a day my
Yeah.
hours are so much better because I'm so much more fulfilled because I had a good day versus
That's amazing. And I feel like the game is figuring out how to get to that place, right? Like how whatever fulfills you, whatever works for your family, like that's the thing to find. And I think you have to keep searching until you find it. And it looks different for everybody and it looks different in different seasons of your life.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I would say, when my kid, like, I think about this a lot right now because though I said I had control of my time when I was running the Riveter, like I did go into the office and I did travel a lot and I had a bunch of employees and a lot of time was spent managing people, which is not my strong suit, is my weakest thing.
so hard it's so hard
Oh, it's so hard. And I'd never done it before. And I went from like never doing it to like, here's a company you're running. And I was like, what the fuck? But, and like not only had I not done it, like I'd worked on Wall Street where there are like no feelings. You are not bringing your whole self to work. Like it is, there's no culture, there's nothing. But like I think about, could I do that, what I was doing in Seattle when the kids were really little, could I do that today when they're 11, 9, 8, and 6?
yeah
Like, I don't think I could because they need something so different from me. And when they were really little, I mentioned that my mom came out and helped us because for me, I felt like, well, my mom is just as good as me, right? Like she can hug them, like do all the things. But now like they need me. They want to talk to me. They have like friend issues or world questions or, and it's like, if I was traveling all the time, like it would be really, really hard. And I'm glad that I'm not in that season right now. But I know as they get older and when they leave, there'll be another season where I will want to travel a ton and where I will be able to, to go faster than I am right now.
I want to
Oh my
double
gosh.
tap on that because that was going to be one of the things I wanted to dig into. We are in like the phase behind you, basically, and we have toddlers. And I feel like there's so much about like you're missing their toddlerhood and you're missing the baby part and they go to school and you never see them again. And like, I know that's not true, but it's just like there's this guilt that you have of that. And like you said, I know from having friends and family with older kids that they almost need more at that point. But I would love like your insight on that, like what is needed and like what that season was like versus the season you're in now, which you sort of just got into. And then just like general tips on like running your house and like keeping things moving.
I mean,
take notes.
so I would say like when you think about, I felt like when I had mom guilt when my kids were little, it was about me, right? It was about me missing things or me, like wondering if I was doing the right thing. My kids were well taken care of by my mom. We had a full-time nanny, like they were good and they will never remember if I was there or not, right? As long as you put like an incredible village in place and you do spend time with them. It wasn't like I was never with them. I spent a lot of time with them, but like they don't remember that I traveled all the time. I say sometimes like, do you remember when I was on a plane every week? And they're like, no. Even my oldest was 5 in 2019 before the pandemic. No memory of me being on a plane all the time. They remember our vacations. They remember our birthdays. They remember like bigger moments where I was always there. But now that they're older, it's kind of, I guess best way to put it is like, we're having an ongoing conversation about life, about the world, about challenges and opportunities. They're watching me. They're seeing everything and they need me more. And I want to be there more to have those conversations. And so I've built a life so I can be there more. And, I logistically, it is so much harder now than it was when they were little because they're in activities. And you don't have to do that as a parent, but I grew up playing sports and I wanted to give my kids those opportunities. I went to camp, like those, those kind of things. And so like the logistics of it are far more complicated. I don't feel like I can outsource the logistics of it. I guess some people say like you could hire a household manager, but like financially I can't do that right now. And so, I would say like the best advice that I have, and this I think applies when your kids are little too and you're a working parent, is to just schedule everything, have a shared calendar with your partner or whoever is helping you take care of the kids. So like my parents will not get on Google Calendar, and we now live in Columbus, Ohio, 500 yards from my parents, and that's by design. Like we need them. And my parents are amazing. But every week I print out a Google document. I print it out for them and stay. And it has everything that's happening for the week, even things they're not involved in at all, my parents. But they need to know kind of like where everybody is, what's going on, because sometimes things like go to hell and I need them to pop over and watch a kid while I take a kid and do something else. But a Google document, and we plan everything in terms of like who's taking who where, who's picking them up. I also I ask friends for a lot of help. Like, my kids are in activities with friends. I grew up in carpools. My kids can do carpools too. So just being really on top of the schedule is incredibly important. I spend so much time like when we're planning their activities for the year, like putting the puzzle together. I will also say selfishly, I try to like encourage my kids to do the same sports. Like 3 of them are in year-round competitive swimming because I'm like, my oldest started doing it. I'm like, just do it too. But I think that's really important. And then I think too, it's become more important for me to have a little bit of time for myself as the kids get older because it's harder. It demands a lot. And so I make sure I get some exercise every day and I schedule that in because it's really important. And I will say like a lot of times it is 25 minutes on the stair mill in our garage. Like, it's not like I'm going to the gym and doing a sauna and, like I would love to do that every day, but I can't. So I think I think a big part of parenting is making sure that you're still standing, breathing, moving, eating, all the things.
And that I
love
feel like
that.
is even more important as your kids get older. I am just like hooked on, I literally wrote it down. I was like, I'm going to put it on a Post-it note at my office. But like, you built a life so you can be there now. Like, I love that because like circling back to like the little kid guilt, like this morning, usually like we're out the door by 7:15. I'm at the office by 7:45. We're in this routine. And this morning I got to like drink coffee with them, because I'm working from home and then traveling. And I was like, oh my God, my 2-year-old is like so big, and I know.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, I'm building a life so I can like, take my family vacations. And so that later I can be, at home when they come home from school. Cause it's like, they don't need me when I'm home from school right now. They just want to go to their friend's house or they want to go play with something. They don't want to like talk. Like, I asked my 4-year-old, I'm like, what'd you do at school? And she's like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's like, and I don't discount, like, I want to be clear, like, I don't discount how fucking hard it is when they're little and like all the feelings and the emotions, because it's a blip and it's like this precious blip, like that, part of you wishes you could be there for every moment of every day to watch and be a part of. But if you are someone who wants to work or needs to work, you can't. Right. And so my good friend, Samantha Edis, asked with for a while, she told me, she's to me kind of like what I am to you. So like her kids are now in high school and one's in college. And she told me when we first met years ago, she's like, try to build a career now when they're little so that you can be there more when they're older. She's like, because you have to be. And, and it's not, and the older stuff, it's not just like for the good stuff, it's for the really hard stuff, because modern kids growing up in this modern moment, like it's a wild ride full of things that we did not deal with. And so we're all in this together for the first time. Like, what in the hell do we do? And now we have to deal with AI too, which it's like, and the only thing about AI is I'm like, what is education now? What is the world? Like, what's it going to look like in 10 years? Because the calculation is very different than it was 10 years ago. But and this is like very meta, but I feel like I could identify, like when I was growing up, say I was 5 in 1988, I feel like I could more easily identify with somebody growing up in 1928 than my children can identify with me growing up in 1988 because the world has changed so quickly. And so we're all navigating it for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But if you're willing to tell like your recent story from 2020, because we've loved to get advice on like, we joke, but like continuing to like your husband. So like the relationship aspect, I feel like I looked up to you as a mom, and you've been like how candid you are on social. Like, I don't think you realize how far that spreads, because I think, and even for me, like the impact it's had on me, I haven't like noticed in the moment, but I notice right now when I'm thinking about like when you said nursing your kids in your office, like I was doing that. And I genuinely feel like it was because of you, right? Like you were the first person that exposed me to that. It feels like so common, but it's not. Like you might see it online, but if you don't know someone, and that was like no big deal to me, like run into the office, the baby's sleeping, it's fine. But then like your husband and your relationship that you've been like, and I'm sure you're not sharing everything, but like that's been inspirational too, because it's just like the stuff that you guys have got through and you're good, you know, like toddlerhood is nothing compared to that, but it just seems like you guys have a really great relationship. And I would love to just for you to tell that story and give us any tips on that front too.
Yeah. So, you know, I mentioned the pandemic started in March of 2020, which we all know. And that really blew up the Riveter's business. But the second thing that happened to me and my family is that on April 2nd, 2020, the FBI knocked on our door. And we learned that my husband was being accused of a federal crime called private sector honest services fraud, which is depriving your employer of your honest services. My husband was never charged with a crime, but we lived through like something that's beyond your worst nightmare. For 4 years, the DOJ investigated my husband. He was accused by a very powerful player, Amazon, his former employer. The government seized all of our assets via civil forfeiture for 2 years. So we had to sell our home to pay lawyers and live with family. It was very public. I lost a lot of work because of it, like millions of dollars of work. My husband lost millions of dollars of work. The FBI raided our home, which is a terrifying experience. And really, I mean, like our lives were annihilated. Everything that we built, everything we knew. And we had the kids and we had a very supportive family, but it's the kind of thing you barely make it through standing. I still sometimes wonder like how in the hell we made it through. And, you know, a lot of people ask like, I can't believe you fought. I'm like, well, the other option was allowing my husband to go to prison for something he never did, which I wasn't going to allow without a hell of a fight. But we fought the whole time not knowing if we'd win or not. And you know, we did it. I wanted to show the girls that I'd done everything I could to help their dad and that you don't back down to a bully. But like, I would say, you know, I feel like I'm giving so many non-inspiring answers, but the truth of it is, for many years, I couldn't think about our relationship because we were just trying to survive. And so there wasn't like, there wasn't time for us as humans or us as in a relationship. It was like, all we could do was fight, parent, and work to make money. And those were the three things that we did. And I think, you know, I think it is an important commentary, and I think it might help young people in those early stages of parenthood too, because there are times when your relationship is just like, it's in the back seat and like, it's going to sit there and you buckle it up and you hope it's safe in the car ride, but like, it cannot be in the front seat. And that's life, right? Because we have priorities. We can't take care of everything all at once. And I was listening to, I think once to like a therapist, you know, talk about how like she hates when young parents get divorced because it is a ruckus, wild time full of a lot of heartache and hardship and your life completely changing and you have no idea what's happening. And so like give it time, give it space to see how you adjust to parenthood. And, you know, I think like when you go through a trauma like we went through, first up is like surviving. And, you know, there are times you might not survive something like that. And now as we're like coming out of it in ways, it's kind of like, okay, who are we? Like, what do we do now? And you have to kind of refigure that out because just like your kids no two kids have the same parents because they come into your life when you're a different person. Like your 4-year-old Nicole has a different mom than your 2-year-old, right? Because you were a first-time mom. It was a different time in your career. Your marriage is constantly changing and seeing new chapters too. And, you know, I love my husband. He's amazing. He's my best friend. And like, this was incredibly hard. Like it was hard in ways I can never really explain. But, you know, I think we tried to be friends. I think one of the big things that we did try to do is when one person was way down, the other person tried to be as up as they could and be like, we will get through this. It will be okay. Because if we were both down, it was impossible.
I literally can't even imagine. I mean, I said a little bit to you. I'm so sorry. I feel like that's such a silly thing to say, but I said to you when you got on, like, that's amazing. You know, obviously, like, I just can't even believe your husband had you and you had yourself and you had the knowledge that you had, because I've been following the story the whole time, having met you right before. And I think of myself as someone that is relatively intelligent and can figure things out. And like, it was so hard for me to understand what was going on and where that was like your background, obviously. But, you know, the CEO of our company, my partner, she always says smart people can figure out complicated things, like incredibly smart people can make them simple. And that's what you do. That's truly, I feel like, what you have done. It sounds like your whole career, but it was like incredible to see you take these like very complicated things that people expected you to just fold, right? Can you give us a little insight on sort of like how you go about that? Or
Well, yes, and I think it's really important because I think, one of the things I've realized through all of my life experiences, but particularly this experience, is both the power of storytelling and also the power of willing to be vulnerable in public when you don't know if you're going to succeed. And I knew, like, we were figuring it out as we went to. Like, when the FBI knocked on our door, we didn't know that Amazon had accused my husband. In fact, we thought, like, no way would Amazon want any part of this with the DOJ. Like, what the hell is happening? No, in fact, they were doing it. But it took us years to kind of pick it apart and figure out what was going on. And we were given the advice to just be silent, like, let it play out. But what I realized, like, I at one point was hired by a big public tech company, given an amazing senior role with a compensation package of $1 million a year. And I was like, I've saved my family. I can pay lawyers. I was fired on the 5th day because I read an article about the civil forfeiture of my family's assets and the allegations against my husband. And at that point, I was like, well, fuck it. This has impacted my career too. Like, I'm going to speak out, because I realized too, like, when someone builds a narrative about you, if you don't say anything back, that's the narrative. That's the story. You have to speak out. Like, we don't have a choice in this world to remain silent when someone is saying something wrong or bad or just that you don't like. And so when I decided to start speaking out, I decided that I would do it. I kind of figured out I think that video would be more effective, but I just started trying to tell the story in these short videos on TikTok. It took me a long time to figure out how to tell the story and break it down and make it simple, but I just kept testing and going as I went. And I think we're often taught to, like, not put something into the world until it's perfect. We don't really have that luxury all the time, right? And so, like, I also think that there's so much power in being willing to be the person that's like if you were going to have a career pivot, to go online and say, like, I want to do something different. And this is what I'm going to do, and tell the story online as it unfolds. Like, maybe you fail, maybe you don't get the new job, maybe your business blows up, but that's how we connect with people in real life, are those, like, going through hard things. And people really appreciate when you're willing to be vulnerable, I think, online or anywhere, and tell your story. There's so much more opportunity for connection.
And what a lesson, like, from a motherhood standpoint too. I feel like you being able to simplify complicated things. What did we just talk about? What a complicated world we're living in. Like, you can use that every day, I'm sure, in motherhood. But, like, sticking up for yourself. I was, like, going to sleep last night thinking about this, doing this. And neither of you know my mom, like, in particular. We have 4 girls in my family too. And my mom grew up, like, she got a good childhood, but, like, whatever. She's like a fuck around and find out type of parent. And that's just what she is. And she's not, like, loud about it. But when I was in high school, there was a couple things, and I wish I could tell the example, but somebody might listen. But she always had our back. Like, and it was like at the age where she didn't say much. She wasn't, like, loud or in your face, but it was like, if someone messes with you, I will fucking annihilate them. Like, right? Like, we will not be standing for that. And it was, like, such an important lesson early on, before you really have that in you. Like, I had it in me. I was, like, kind of like a tough little kid, but, like, mentally, like, she needed to build that up in my head so that when I became an adult, I would do something like that. Like, clearly your mom did that as well. What you're doing is showing not only your daughters, but, like, anyone else that looks at the story, like, no, we're not backing down to anyone. And that's not what life's about.
I love that. And, like, I could start crying because, like, my mother was the reason I was able to get up and fight. And I think everyone's always been to me like, oh, you've been so strong through this. But when it first happened, when the FBI first knocked on our door, like, I now know, like, I froze. I mean, my body, like, went into freeze. I lost 20 pounds in, like, 2 weeks. My legs started shaking and wouldn't stop. And I was quite literally hiding in the bathroom floor because I was just like, what the fuck is going to happen? And if you know anything about federal criminal investigations, like, if you get a target letter like my husband did, like, you're getting charged. That's it. End of story. And once you're charged with a federal crime, like, the government has every advantage. It's very hard to win, even if you're innocent. The system is just dumb, really. But my mom, and it was during the pandemic, so my mom couldn't come help, couldn't come give me a hug, couldn't come be there. And my mom is the toughest person I know. And one day she FaceTimed me and she was like, get up. And I was like, I can't. She's like, you can, and you will. She's like, get up. And she was like, if anybody can fight these people, it's you. And you don't need to do it just for your kids. Do it for your husband. Like, get up. And I remember being like, oh, fine. And I, like, got up and started fighting. But it took, like, our mothers matter so deeply our whole lives. Like, it's a thing, if you're close with your mom, if you're lucky enough to be close with your mom and have a mom, like, you realize the power of it and how it helps define you as a mother. Like, I look at my mother as my example of motherhood. Like, she did a great job. I hope to do as well as her. But, like, you mother your whole life, which is something to know too, right? Of, like, the little years are a blip and you wish you could be there for more of them, but you get to be a mother your whole life, even if their childhood is not that long.
I was thinking that when you said you're right next to your parents, I was like, what a good reminder for me that like your motherhood lasts so long. Stop agonizing over these like days when they're 2 years old. Like we got to be with them every single second. It's like you're hopefully, God willing, going to be, you know, there for a long, long time. Like sounds like you're seeing your mom every single day, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully she didn't waste and lose too much sleep when you're 3 years old. That like, you know, she didn't get every inch of that time.
Right. And
I
the
feel
thing is, like, I think working motherhood, we think of it as a newer concept. But for millennia, women have been tasked with work, right? Like, but we lived in communities and villages where people we knew took care of our kids. And I think that's kind of the difference. But like women were always, you know, they worked very hard, always, right? Like, like in an agricultural society, women were working all day long. Their kids were either with them or being taken care of by an older woman or, you know, in their community, but we've always worked. And so we've never really been around the kids the whole time. We have a very weird paradigm now that I think is largely like created by this idea that we're supposed to be everything all the time, everywhere.
First of all, I mean, like the thing I kept thinking about in my head, and I'm just being very honest, is like the fact that you were like, I'm gonna show my daughters that I'm doing everything I can to save my husband. And this stance, like, I would hope I would do that. Like, I think, like, the minute you said that, like, I'm like, would I immediately be like, what the fuck did you do? You know, versus like, I'm gonna say, like, save this, like, that whole thing. I'm just so sorry that you had to go through that, and I just cannot imagine. And it's such a good reminder of like, you were like, my husband's my best friend, like, you know, I love him, et cetera, et cetera. Like, that's your partner that you chose, and like, that's, you know, like you'd protect your business partner. Like, you need to protect them 10 times, 100 times more.
And it's like and there's a lot to it too. And I would, you know, this is the one thing that I never said, like while the DOJ investigation was going on, that I was never allowed to say publicly because our lawyers didn't want me to be like, to have to testify.
Yeah.
But like my husband and I, because we're best friends, like I knew everything he'd done in his business. He ran everything by me. And I am a graduate of a top 5 law school. And I was like, yeah, it's fine. You know, like, so when the FBI came, I didn't have to question, like, what did you do? Because I knew what he'd done. And in fact, it said, I think it's fine. And it is fine. Like a federal judge said that my husband didn't even break his Amazon employment contract, you know, like that, which is what we always said.
Which, like, I'm
But,
also
like-
like pissed kind of for you. Like, I'm like, how the hell does that happen? Like, how the hell can the FBI just come in and take away 2 years of your family's life dealing with this, like raid your house, and your husband didn't even break an employment contract. Like, that is so fucked up.
Yeah. I mean, I think what I learned is that powerful people in this country, in this moment in time, can really do whatever they want. And it's a terrifying and horrible thing about America. And I used to be really involved in politics, and I'm not now, because I just think we're in a weird place where like elections are auctions because of our camp, you know, like they are, elections are auctions. And I think that most political power goes to protecting and providing for our benefactors, you know, like the American oligarchs. Like, it's just like, it's ridiculous. It is a terrifying thing for me. Like, I used to want to run for office, always thought I would run for office. I would never run for office now, largely because I'm terrified of what powerful people can do to you. Right. And that's a bad commentary on America, but it has made me turn more inward to my community. So now, like, I spend the time I spent on national politics, I spend it volunteering in my community for things that my family participates in. And I love that. But I do think we're in this like super weird moment in the political landscape. And I think very few people are actually being served. And I don't even know like where America goes. And it's a wild thing. It's just a wild thing to experience.
Well,
I
I'm
couldn't
so
agree
sorry.
more.
Thank you. Thanks.
I wanted to ask, just like, I had like 2 final kind of big questions. What do you feel like has changed since then? Like, you're not even done with this, right? You're still dealing with this every single day.
So like Amazon, when they couldn't get my husband charged with a federal crime, they sued him for, like, they said he was a monopolist. Amazon called my husband a monopolist. And for racketeering, and my husband won that civil lawsuit, but Amazon's appealing it. And like the repercussions of what Amazon did reshaped our lives, right? Like, we don't live in Seattle anymore, where we'd intended to raise our kids. Now we live in Ohio. Our careers are forever changed. And when you Google me, like everything I've ever done, from like, you know, women raised 2% of VC capital, and I raised tens of millions of dollars, or all the things I've ever done. When you Google me, you read now about Amazon. And so that's going to forever be part of my story. But like, I think the things that have changed for me are that I really learned who had my back and who didn't. And that is a hard lesson to learn, but one that I'm glad I learned, because then you can spend your time with the people who you know are close to you. I've turned much more inward to my family. I no longer care about the things that I It's like I like to think I didn't care about them, but I did. Like, I don't need to be on stage. I don't need to be invited to the party or the conference or it's like I'm good just doing the work that I want to do. But I also now, like, I have a deep desire to try to reform the criminal legal system in this country and a deep desire to tell the stories of people who are being crushed by the system because so many people are. And no one deserves to be. People deserve to start businesses and build their dreams and build families and go forward. And we can't just let powerful people stomp on us because they can. I really now care a lot more about the work I do and that like I'm really dedicated to helping people through inflection points because that is the thing I figured out how to do for myself. Whether it's a crisis like Amazon, which I hope very few people in the world have to go through, or like figuring out their career, like what they're passionate about, what they're good at, like how we're going to navigate the coming years with AI, all of those things, right? It's like, how do we go through these inflection points? Because it's not something you can be taught in school. Like it's something you have to figure out along the way.
I love that. And I feel like that's why we're so perfect for right now. Cause I just think that's what our audience is. It's just one inflection point. It's just the age and like the stage of life and everyone's sort of reevaluating. So these conversations are so important. With that, what's next for you? Is there anything you can share?
Yeah. So, with the Riveter, I've been working a lot with women who have pivoted from corporate America to building businesses on their own. We have a newsletter that goes out every week. And then we do a lot of courses and office hours, kind of like work through these changes. So I'm digging more into that, but broadening it really to include kind of all different sorts of inflection points and how we navigate them. And so I'm working on that. I'm working on a book, which is exciting. And I have a new podcast coming out later in the fall that's really dedicated to this idea of like how we survive inflection points.
Wow. I am very excited to tune into that.
I just like was hanging on every word. I mean, I just think you hit so many great points about like just working motherhood and, just motherhood in general. I think the inflection points, like you said, are just a huge, like, I don't know, or I don't want to say burden, but like a huge, part of our lives right now. And so I think all of that can be interpreted and, assumed in so many different ways. So thank you for one, being vulnerable and walking through all of that, and two, just kind of sharing your story because I needed to hear it this morning.
It is like the idea, I think part of the issue with inflection points, and I don't know about you all when you were growing up, but when I was growing up, I kind of thought, okay, like I'm going to go to college, maybe go to grad school. I'll have a career. I'll probably work at one place forever. Hopefully I'll get married and have kids and we'll figure it all out and then I'll retire and that's that. And like, that's not our life. That's not the way we live in this world today, right? Like we have so many more opportunities than we might have 50 years ago, but with it comes so many more challenges. And I don't think that corporate America is what it was for our parents. It is not a safe place, right? It is a place where, we know the workplace is going to change rapidly over the next 5 years, and it probably won't look the same. And so you have to figure out how you will deal with these changes. And I honestly think too, like we don't have to be reactive. We can be proactive. Right? Like we are not victims of this changing society. We can build the lives that we want if we try.
I can't agree more. And I'm probably going to expose myself and make myself sound like very basic. But what's so interesting to me, and I feel like whether people admit it or not, they're probably going to have this in common with me, is as someone who is like a high achiever, whatever, right? People pleaser. Like I do think it's a generational thing. I always like performed, and I performed in like what was the expectation of me at that time. And I think I performed and then, I got to college and I hit a little bit of like, I had a little bit more kind of like free time, I guess, but like I learned to just perform there. Then I learned to perform in the next like phase with career. And I feel like for me, motherhood was the first thing that just like chewed me up, spit me out.
Yeah, I don't think it makes you basic. I think like you're a woman who was raised in America in the 80s and 90s. Like we were told this is how you do it. And this is how you can be good and this is how you can succeed. And of course you're performing because we always have to perform. And the interesting thing about motherhood is that like no one's watching. Right? Like there is no audience anymore. No one's told you how to do this really, other than like doing it in front of people, like when you take your kids to a restaurant or whatever. But like when you're at home in the dark of night or dealing with, diapers and all this shit, like no one's watching and you have to figure it out and there's no roadmap. And I think, what I'm trying to instill in my girls is that there is no, this is how you be good. This is how you succeed. Because I have no idea. Right. And I don't want them to go to a desk and perform. Because I did the same thing, Nicole. I was like, I achieved in college. I got into the top law school. I got the best job. I did a good job and I just worked and I worked and I worked. And it's like, why?
Right.
What was I trying to win?
Yes.
So, yeah.
No, it's funny too. Like, and on a lighter note, like your audience just doesn't applaud you. Like I'm on vacation right now, and like my son last night, like bought him new toys yesterday. I fucking killed it as a mom yesterday. I'm like, hey, how am I doing? And he's just like he doesn't care. Like you're like, I'm doing like all these things and no one really cares. So it also makes you ask yourself, like, are you happy? Like, is this working for you? Because you're not getting like an A on this report card. You're just getting through the day. No, I love that. I truly cannot wait to read whatever you're putting out there, listen to the podcast. I couldn't be more grateful for your time. I honestly was like anticipating this, like almost like built it up too much in my head. Like I was like, this is my moment. These are all the questions I want to ask. But I feel like you've been inspiring me and so many others. I love that you have 4 daughters. I just think that immediate impact and then the ripple effect, that they'll even have on their friends with the stuff that you're kind of giving them. So thank you on behalf of basically everyone that you've helped sort of along the way. And we have our lightning round to wrap it. One parenting hack that saved your sanity.
I do the same dinner every Monday, the same dinner every Tuesday, the same dinner every Wednesday for at least a month or 6 weeks. And then I just don't have to think about it. It's fast. It's easy.
I love that. And everyone eats the same dinner, obviously. Okay. And that was even like that when they were young.
Yeah. Yes, but it's like I'm very basic. I'm like, you're getting noodles.
Okay, good.
I should probably give them something else, but I don't.
That's hilarious. And I like that you admitted it because that's where I'm at too. Guilty pleasure, non-negotiable, just for joy.
Oh my gosh. This is ridiculous. Every night I have a Skinny Cow ice cream sandwich.
Oh my God, I love that. What are you currently reading or listening to?
I am currently listening to Mel Robbins' podcast. I'm interested in just like how she interviews people and the topics she takes on.
Me too. I like her. I like that one. One piece of advice you give other women that you may have needed to hear yourself.
You don't have to feel guilty because we can't do everything. Just do the best that you can. And sometimes try to do what you want to do.
I love that. Thank you. I hope I can take that into my day. I'm so happy that you did this with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was really fun.